moving someone into a managerial role that shouldn't be a manager is the worst thing that you could possibly do. Because now, not only are they maybe not doing a great job themselves, they're hurting others in the process and other like really good employees. And I've also like done my fair share of promoting people into managerial roles by nature of having to do that. And they've been horrible managers, really good ICs and horrible managers. And the problem with doing that is that when you do that, what happens is even if you have the trust from the people below you or below them that you now put them over, those people might be afraid to tell you that this person's a horrible manager. So they don't do it. They start talking about it. You don't hear it firsthand because they love you, but you promoted that person into a position that manages them, so they're afraid to question your authority. So then other people hear it, and then it's just a horrible chain of like gossip and negativity and things that start to bubble up.
Melissa, welcome to Founders and Empanadas. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to eat this empanada and chat with you.
Yeah, let's dig in. All right. How is it?
Very good.
So we had the empanada miracle. Like on the 8th day of Hanukkah, we received the empanada delivery. There's some complications with Uber Eats, but we made it happen.
Made it happen.
Awesome. Well, Melissa, I'm super excited to have you on. And today will really be a masterclass on B2B marketing, and no one better to bring on than you. And just to kick things off, I'd love for you to share a little bit more with the audience about your journey and especially how you made the transition from media into tech.
Yeah. As you mentioned, kind of a large portion of my career was in media. I was at BuzzFeed very early on, and then I went to go start a company called Cheddar, which is a live streaming media news network. I think my journey into digital media was always mostly based on disruption and where I saw disruption happening and what I was attracted to in terms of hyper growth, really experimental, really trying to redefine stagnant ways of thinking and industries and ways of operating. And I was very excited about that. And, after I spent, I think, 12 plus years in media, I kind of had this moment of, hey, I think something's wrong here. I don't think this is going to be an industry that will survive the next phase and wave of what happens with the diversification of platforms and attention spans. And I don't know if I want to be in this long term. So I pivoted over to B2B SaaS. There was, I think it was, back in, where were we, 2021, end of 2020. And COVID had happened. And I think we start to see this really interesting time in software where everyone was blowing up, everyone was raising money. It was a really exciting time to be there. And I went over to ClickUp, and I was super excited about the idea of saving people time and enhancing productivity and all your work in one place, and a tool that really was thinking about bundling way before bundling was a thing. And instead of like point solution, it was, hey, we have everything that you need to do to be able to work smarter and faster and be more productive. And that was really exciting for me. And I think also, the ability to think about marketing in B2B more the way that I used to think about it in B2C was also really, really exciting. There's just a lot of opportunity there. I didn't see anyone else really doing that the way that I was thinking about it. And it was just kind of the new wave of where I thought disruption was headed.
Very cool. Yeah, I still remember this is maybe early 2021, getting to traveling again post-pandemic and walking through SFO and seeing ClickUp ads everywhere and save a day out of the week. And I'm especially happy about this episode because I'm a big ClickUp nerd myself with our company. So I am honored to have you on. Your marketing was very effective to me.
Thank you. I love to hear that.
Yeah. And Melissa, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about kind of that aha moment that you had in realizing that B2B marketing really needed that B2C approach.
Yeah. I mean, for us, our, ClickUp, our TAM, our addressable market was really everyone. It was, teams of 1 to thousands. It was industry agnostic, role agnostic. We're dealing with engineers and project managers and product managers and, marketing managers, and really just every single role, every single type of person, every single type of company and size. And to be able to market that way, you're kind of limited because your ICP becomes everyone. And the challenge, usually within B2B, your ICP is not everyone, and you're able to reach them in very specific ways. But when your ICP is everyone and you know that your growth potential is enormous, where do you invest? You invest in more of a B2C strategy, because that's really what, the B2C motion is about. It's about volume, it's about users, it's about traction, rather than hitting that right ICP. So it was mostly like the realization that we couldn't market the same way that other B2B companies were marketing if we wanted to be able to actually realize our potential and reach the addressable market that we knew we could.
Yeah. I'd love to hear a little bit more of the inner workings of ClickUp's marketing team back in the day. Like, did you even define personas? The fact that anyone could use your product? How granular did you get in targeting?
We did. I mean, brand definitely didn't define personas. Like we kind of touched on a few that we knew we could like break into pretty well, and the ones that were really converting very quickly. We definitely had a lot of data and a lot of kind of like data to work off of. The high level brand marketing that we were doing on commercials, some of our commercials, so ads, and some of our our out of home, which you mentioned. All of that was sort of persona agnostic. But yeah, we definitely did dive deeper into specifically engineers, marketing managers, some of the personas that we saw converting at a higher rate and landing and expanding faster. So yeah, there was a focus for sure. But at the end of the day, you sort of had to do both very well, which was the challenge. You have to market to everyone, and you have to have your brand marketing really marketing to everyone. And then you also have to do persona level marketing. So that was kind of the challenge and why the B2C approach, while some of it was more targeted by persona, still had to exist.
Yeah, makes sense. And just taking a step back, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey with BuzzFeed, maybe any crazy stories that you had while working there.
Empanadas are interesting because they're so doughy that you like, usually if I'm usually not eating during an interview, but you can like get that quick bite. This is like, takes a while, so forgive me. Yeah, BuzzFeed was wild. You can imagine, like, this should have been a television show about working at BuzzFeed. If you can imagine the craziest work environment that could ever exist, this was it. Every day we'd have famous animals coming into the office, celebrities. We'd be doing stunts in our cafeteria. One day, this is a crazy story now that you asked. One of our, we were doing an interview with Tyler, the creator. And we had a huge office at that point. We were in Flatiron District, and I think we had maybe 600 or 700 people in the office. And a lot of us didn't know who was coming in at what time because we had celebrities in all the time. And me and my team were working, and he must have finished his interview and decided he wanted to play a prank on the office. And he came over to our section with a mask on and a fake gun and said, this is a hold up, like, and kind of like pretended that he was robbing the place or going to maybe hurt us. That was fun. So it was a pretty horrible experience. We all ducked under our desks. That was pretty scary. So that was a wild story. And then he ran out laughing, and I was like, what was that? And they're like, oh, that was Tyler. And we're like, yeah. So that was pretty wild. A lot of other really crazy stories, but yeah, it was probably maybe the craziest when we thought we were getting stuck up, and it was Tyler, the creator.
I'm glad no one tried to play hero and like tackle him.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
yeah.
Awesome. And Melissa, I'm curious throughout your career, how have you maybe overcome any internal resistance to bring more of that humanity to B2B marketing when it wasn't more that theme was more widespread?
Yeah, I think the resistance didn't really come early on, and I think what I was able to do what I was able to do because I came in very early, and I had a lot of trust built with the CEO, Seb, and his buy-in on what we were doing and our approach to everything. And I think that was really important because once you're able to have that trust, have that have that approach be kind of validated by your CEO, the buy-in around him becomes very easy. Now, when it got challenging again is when you hire more people and there are more opinions and voices in the room, and they're like, we have to go enterprise and we have to change everything and we can't market this way anymore. And I think that's just I think it's people just wanting to have opinions on things, and I don't think it's all necessarily correct. I think it's maybe the way that they had approached it in their previous jobs, and they were sticking to a playbook, and this is what the playbook told them that they needed to do and needed to say. But I don't necessarily think that like anything changed. I think it's more of you just dealing with more opinions rather than you're dealing with anything else, which is why getting in early and having those wins and getting that trust built and that validation on a couple of early wins really matters, because then there's no pushback when things get tougher.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you just scaled your department with ClickUp, how would you best overcome those new opinions that always come with new hires and kind of really get them bought in on the ClickUp way of doing things?
Beauty is a lot of people joined ClickUp because of the marketing we were doing. So the buy-in kind of was inherent with them joining the company. Like, we had a bunch of folks come from Atlassian because they were so excited about what we were doing at ClickUp, which was so cool. It's like, oh, not only does this validate that like it's working, but people are, jumping ship to join us. I think the other approach was a little bit more brute force. Like, sometimes I would just do things. I knew that I could I knew that I had the trust to be able to like do something and then apologize later. So I would do that sometimes. And I think it's when you trust yourself enough and you've built trust around you, you can kind of play those cards sometimes, which is, hey, I'm just gonna go for this. And if it doesn't work out, I'll apologize later. So a little bit of brute force. But I think like there was a lot of buy-in. The culture was amazing. We did hire really great people, and they loved it. And I think they felt like it was a really special moment in time, and we were building something really special together. And I think when you have that culture and that camaraderie, and people are bought into like what you're doing and why you're differentiated, especially like leading with brand and being an out there humorous, take on everything, everything becomes a lot easier.
Totally. No better validation than someone wanting to change their whole career path and moving cities potentially to work with that brand. That's great. Awesome, Melissa. And so on Founders and Empanadas, we like to eat this comfort food of empanadas, but while diving into more uncomfortable topics like founder mental health and key executives as well. So while you were on this wild rocket ship of scaling ClickUp, what were maybe some unexpected emotional challenges that emerged during that period of rapid growth?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm always very honest about this because it's very hard. And I think few people can really do it. And I think a lot of people want to do it. And not many people understand like what it actually takes to do it. I mean, it was a 6-day, 7-day a week job where I was working 20 hours a day. Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, I think to accomplish really amazing things, it's really tough. And it can be tough mentally, it can be tough physically, emotionally. I wasn't working out, I wasn't going to the gym, I wasn't doing things that I like normally do because I was really passionate and very driven about this one singular focus. And I think that's okay. I think we go through periods of our life where that's important and that's necessary, especially if you're driven. Like that's a part of being driven, I think, which is you do things in sprints in life, and then you take the necessary rest and break in between them to gather yourself again and build back up. But I mean, for me personally, I put everything that I have, every drop of every ounce of energy and effort and passion and drive into that. I mean, that's what I care about. So yeah, I think it's all emotionally challenging. Because you're so invested in that and because you're working that way, I think it becomes even more emotional, right? And I'm an emotional person. I think I have high emotional intelligence, which means I also really care about the people that I work with and the people under me. And you're managing people and you're managing their emotions. And yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. I think you have to have this very kind of like built for this, or what you're getting into and you can handle it. It takes a lot out of you, and there's certainly a lot of sacrifices you make at a hyper growth company that's scaling and wants to become a multi-billion-dollar company. Like that's it. That's what you have to do.
Yeah. And I want to make sure I heard that right. 20 hours a day. How did you survive?
I'm doing it now. I mean, you do what you need to do to build things, right? Like Saturday was a day of rest and I would check in occasionally, but I worked 6 days a week. And I think it's like you take small breaks when you need to and you work, but you're really driven and you're working on projects that excite you. I'm doing the same thing again. I took a long pause to travel and do things and get my energy back. But when you love what you're doing, it doesn't really feel like you're working 20 hours a day because you're kind of working on what matters to you.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big proponent of like, instead of seeing it as, work-life balance, is really work-life alignment and finding what drives you. And when you get that point, it's fine to, set up a IV drip of empanadas to get through the day, whatever you need.
Yeah, IV drip of empanadas and coffee.
Oh yeah. Awesome. And I'm curious to learn a little bit more also about just scaling your team at ClickUp. How were you able to maintain that core culture of really what set ClickUp's marketing apart as you scaled the team and, scaled into dozens, into hundreds?
Yeah, I mean, we had really clear core values. We were really very like core to them, and we hired people that respected them. And I think what happens when you do that and you create a culture of great people is when you mishire or you hire incorrectly, it's very clear very fast that those people are not going to be a fit for the company. And you give them a shot, but you just know, which I think is it's just testament to building out a culture where the outliers and the people that like won't work present themselves rather than they can hide. And I think that really was key to us scaling. Like I think you make a bunch of bad hires and you can set the entire company on fire. Like I really do believe that. I see that like very clearly, and I've seen it very clearly. We did make a bunch of bad hires, and it was very bad. Like it was bad for work. It was bad for culture. It was bad for other people. So I think like that's the most important thing you can do is hire well. And I think establishing an understanding of how you work, the expectations, who's going to be around you, and the type of people that we believe should be at that company is really important, because then there's no surprises when that person joins, what the expectations are. When I first joined, and I was talking to our CEO before I joined, he goes, this is tough, right? There's going to be work and life imbalance here. And I said, I mean, that's exactly how I've operated my entire career. I don't really believe in work-life balance because work is my life and I'm passionate about it and I want to achieve great things and work for great companies and great people. And, that was the alignment. And I echoed that to every other person that I talked to. I said, hey, if you want to move fast and, work your way up and work in a hyper-growth company where you can go from IC to manager if you want to, or figure out whatever path it is and have an amazing career, this is the place for you. But if you want a 9-to-5 job, this is not going to work. And I just made it very clear. And I think it's really important to set that up front, because the worst thing you can do is the misalignment. It's the worst part.
Totally. Yeah. I see that a lot. I'm in the staffing space where, there's too much time from recruitments spent on kind of trying to tell the candidates of how awesome it's going to work, even though it's like a hypergrowth company that's a rocket ship that is incredibly stressful. That misalignment, that very quickly shows itself within like the first week of the candidate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you see it immediately.
Yeah. And were there any points while you were scaling your team where you realized that, the approach you were taking to hiring and traditional team building wasn't working and you need to change it up to match that new scale?
Yeah. I mean, I think you go through periods where certain people are good for that period of time, and they're not poised to grow with the organization. And sometimes they are, but sometimes the people that you hire very early on aren't going to cut it for the next level and phase of growth, which is really tough because you have to identify that. And we did a lot of really interesting like exercises with like how we rank performance and what performance looked like and the fit at that stage. And I think that's also something that you don't have to deal with if you're not growing that quickly. But, if you're going from, hey, we want to go to 500 million ARR in 3 years, what does that look like? There are people that you hired day one when you were below a Series A company or a Series A company that are not going to be cut out for a Series C stage company. And I think that's just, then you're looking for a different personality, you're listening for a different type, or you're growing that person in a different way. Now, I'm not saying there's also an interesting point here where I want to clarify that, like, I don't think that 100% of the right decisions are going out and getting people from big name companies. I think that actually can really backfire. And I think resting on brand name from other people is also like not a great way to hire at all. And that's very easy to do. It's like, oh, we have to hire people from ServiceNow and like huge companies because that's the company we want to be. I think that's not the right way to hire. I think it's like you need people, some people that have seen certain phases of growth and have done certain things in their career. Now, maybe they've done it in different companies in different ways, but there's a balance between, I think, people that have seen the phases of growth that you want to go through, but people that are too high level or too comfortable to be able to scale backwards into a role that requires them to really roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. So it's this like messy middle of like, how do you balance like what that hire looks like at that phase, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I'm very much at that stage with my business where all the hires that I've made from, like Fortune 500 type companies, it's like a fish out of water working at a startup. And I've over-indexed on startup experience.
I don't think I've ever really seen it work well. Like I don't, and it makes sense. Like a startup is a fire, all hands on deck, pivoting 1,000 times a day. It's super tough for someone that's been at a 5,000 person company to understand.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any examples you can share of a teammate? You don't have to share their name, but a teammate where you were able to realize that they weren't the right fit at the next level of scale, and maybe what are some tips that you have of being able to identify that?
I think it's just the level of thinking, the strategic level of thinking that goes into being more thoughtful about how things are done and how to systematize those things and building out the process to be able to scale that and be able to do it better and more efficiently and grow within whatever that is. And I think people that are just, that are like either ICs or they're managers, but they're just like, do the thing, but they can't think outside of the box or grow to that next level or understand how to like make it a system and fire themselves and delegate more. And you coach them into being hopefully able to do that. And you try and you give them tips and tactics and you tell them how to do things. And they can't ever, that really doesn't resonate with them or their way of doing it. Like you can only tell someone so many times where there should be triggers where you never have to tell them that again. And I think it's not like I'd have no problem repeating myself, but if it's not like catching on and you're trying a bunch of different ways to say, hey, like over here, like, and they're not getting it, it's not going to work. And I think you slowly start to like, I really like to be honest with people as much as I can be. And I really start to say, hey, like, where do you want to be in 3 years? Like, what are your career aspirations? Like, and you can be honest, like, is it to be a manager? Is it to be an IC? Like, I want to put them on the right path. I mean, I've also like done my fair share of promoting people into managerial roles by nature of having to do that. And they've been horrible managers, really good ICs and horrible managers. And the problem with doing that is that when you do that, what happens is even if you have the trust from the people below you or below them that you've now put them over, those people might be afraid to tell you that this person's a horrible manager. So they don't do it. They start talking about it. And you don't hear it firsthand because they love you, but you promoted that person into a position that manages them. So they're afraid to question your authority. So then other people hear it. And then it's just a horrible chain of like gossip and negativity and things that start to bubble up. So, there's a lot of complications. I think moving someone into a managerial role that shouldn't be a manager is the worst thing that you could possibly do. Because now, not only are they maybe not doing a great job themselves, they're hurting others in the process and other like really good employees. So I think that's the worst part. I mean, managing someone out at an IC level is different than managing someone else that has been managing other people where those people now, might be looking for other jobs because they've been managed by someone that should not be managing.
Yeah. I've certainly made that mistake a few times with promotions to manager roles. And once you move them up, it's incredibly hard, in some cases impossible to move them back.
You got to get them out. Yeah. It's, it never works moving them backwards. You move them backwards and then you have to move them out.
Awesome. Well, Melissa, I'd love to zoom out a little bit and dive a bit deeper into marketing. I'm curious with, your roles, how do you balance data-driven decisions with just your creative intuition? And are there any concrete examples of that balancing act that you had to do in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a mix. And I think marketers that over-index for both gut and both data don't get it right. Because there's always like, I think the intuition and the gut is what makes us special and differentiated, and especially like in the world of AI. Like if you're just making decisions based off data, there's no humanity left in those decisions. Here's an example. We we kind of wanted to punch up at ClickUp, and we wanted to make how do we put ourselves next to our biggest competitor? And we decided to go against Atlassian and Jira and punch up against them. And the reason we did so was kind of twofold. One, the sentiment and what we were hearing from our sales team, the data we were hearing from our sales team, and the sentiment market was that people were really unhappy with Jira. They were really unhappy with Atlassian and some of the decisions they were making. Oh no, are these crows about to eat my lemons? This could be really bad. These crows are gonna. Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
You know. But yeah, I think the data-driven decisions that we were making were really based on what we were hearing from sales teams and what we were like confident that we could do. And then we were going to Reddit a lot and seeing what the sentiment was against Jira itself. And the comments, they don't lie. So it's data, it's anecdotal data, but it's thousands of comments that are saying this is the worst software I've ever used. And we were like, all right, we feel confident enough to make this decision. Some of it's gut that we could punch up against them, and some of it is data. And then we created these very funny, I think, campaigns that were went against them pretty heavily. And we validated that with the performance data that we saw in market after we started running those campaigns and the sentiment analysis. And we knew that 5 to 7 or 8% where the sentiment analysis would fall below like the threshold of what we normally saw would be okay, because that type of campaign is so polarizing that it makes sense. So it was both like, can we hit our CAC payback, and like, are we actually selling deals, and is this raising our awareness as a brand? So those are the metrics that we were looking against. And it's a sentiment, like, is it not going up, the negative sentiment not going above 8% on everything. And that's sort of the balance that we had to strike once we were in market with this campaign. So it was a bit of gut. We knew we could do it. We felt that the gut was also definitely the creative decisions. There's no data that was going to back the way that we took this. We created basically SNL style ads to poke fun at them based on like traditional formats that people would know, like pharmaceutical ads. And we that was all gut creative. It was my creative team that came up with that. And it was like we struck the balance between the data telling us that we could do it, the understanding of the sentiment analysis that we probably could get away with this and do it in a really clever way, and then the creative team, all gut and intuition based on historical data that had things that had worked. But really, it's gotten intuition. Like, can we land these jokes? Are they as funny externally to our core ICP as they are internally to us at this roundtable? And I think that's the perfect balance. Like that's I think my favorite campaign of all time, because it was the perfect blend of data and gut and creativity and everything and teamwork.
Yeah. I know I'm just one data point, but it was very effective on me. Whenever I hear the word Jira, I've got this mental image of this old dinosaur guy getting fired. So it's great. Awesome, Melissa. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your new company and what you're working on now at OutLever.
Yeah. So OutLever effectively turns companies into their dream trade publications and allows them to elevate and give thought leadership power to the people that are in their consumer set, their ICP set, by just talking to them. It allows them to build the credibility and authority in their industry and have relevant conversations with those in market that they want to be speaking to and building relationships with. So it's really a bet on the fact that outbound has been killed and commoditized and doesn't look very promising for the future of what's happening. I feel like it's a race to the bottom. Like you have, AI SDR companies coming out saying like they're going to win in the space. But the funny thing about that is like they're going to win in the space by destroying the space. So our bet is sort of against that. and the fact that human relationships will still very much matter, especially in the sales cycle. And also the fact that companies can own the authority and credibility in their space now. Media, I worked in media for so many years, and I've never seen a gaping hole like what we're seeing now. There's, newsrooms have been gutted. The credibility of what these companies once had is no longer. And I think that opens a really big window for the ability for companies to come in there and own the things that they care about, own the news they care about. So that's what we're building.
Very cool. Any particular industries that have had kind of surprising results by working with you?
We're pretty industry agnostic. I think the unique industries are like the surplus energy equipment industries. The industries where you're able to talk to a couple of people and the circles are so small that you see the transactions happening really fast. Like some of these are sort of developing into like business relationships so quickly, way faster than we thought possible. But I think it's by the nature of actually the industry itself and the fact that it's small, and just talking to these people is really, establishing a relationship from nothing. We've seen, it's actually amazing. Like we're seeing wins and cool things every day, and just how we're ranking in SEO for certain keywords and certain people, and being able to own the SEO of like the people that we're talking to because it's editorialized. It's very cool.
Let's chat offline after this. I'm interested to learn more for my business.
Cool.
Cool. Awesome, Melissa. This is a question I love to ask everyone that comes on. But what's one strongly held belief that you have that you think 90% of other founders would disagree with?
Ooh, strongly held belief.
Give me your best hot take.
Unless you're building something that is like OpenAI or something else, like I don't believe like many of these companies should be taking $50 million rounds pre-revenue. That's maybe a founder-led belief that people would disagree with. I think that you should have product market fit before you raise $12 million. Also, I think another thought would be that, and I said this the other day, and I think people resonated with it, but brand isn't at this stage, and our stage isn't like, it's not throwing fancy conferences, and it's not building a really fancy website, and it's not spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a redesign. What it is it's having our motion work and having our customers really excited and able to give us referrals and being able to make people happy, and that it's working and that we're growing and making product decisions. Like that's what brand is at this stage. And I think there are a lot of companies that don't operate that way. They raise a ton of money and they spend millions of dollars immediately on building brand. But brand is nothing if it's empty. And I think that's something maybe some founders would disagree with because they do the opposite of that. But everything, I'm the biggest believer in brand. Like that's been my entire career. But I think brand means different things at different stages.
Awesome. I love especially that last one of just being customer focused and result outcome focused really can be your brands. And I've seen some founder friends that they'll like insist on an expensive new logo before raising their Series A, and it's like, guys, like, where's the real business value?
Yeah.
Melissa, any marketing books that you recommend that have really been impactful in your career?
Honestly, it's not a marketing book. Actually, How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp is really great. I read that very early on in my career, and it shaped a lot of my thinking. And then Grit by Angela Duckworth, which is just something you need to read if you're a founder, because I think a lot of this comes down to perseverance and grit and not giving up and fighting every single day to make it happen, and not letting the things that are not going well tear you down, and kind of bulldozing through it and addressing your own challenges and personality issues and things you have to deal with when you're like faced with growing something yourself. And I think both of those books both help on the how things grow side, and then also the resilient side. I think resilience is actually more of a driver in success than anything else. So yeah, I would recommend those too.
Very cool. How did you approach maybe reinventing yourself and reinventing your resilience through all the change that you've experienced in like hypergrowth companies you've been at?
I think just like going in again like a bulldog kind of, and just like pretending that there's no failure and there's no fear and that doesn't exist, and just doing the thing. I think like doing the thing is the best thing you could possibly do, because you get feedback, you iterate, like if you if you give other people visibility into your way of thinking and how you're operating and what your belief system is, over time you get that back. And I think that's really been like entirely like how I approach it. I try to stay ultimately very optimistic, and I try to operate on a wavelength of failure doesn't exist, and we can always win, and we will overcome things. And I think that's just kind of it. I get this like tunnel vision, and the tunnel vision is very good. I established that, or it kind of it was a part of like at BuzzFeed when I kind of didn't know any better, and not knowing any better, and that naivety into going into that industry and understanding what the task was that was ahead of us. It was like, now you see it in hindsight, you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe we did that. Like, that's pretty wild. But at the time, I didn't really know any better. I was too young and inexperienced and didn't have any experience in even that industry in a legacy way. So I hadn't come in with this attitude of it can't be done or put up blockers. And I think the more experience you have in life, like the more blockers your brain wants to put up, that like you just believe that things can't be done because you just know how hard they'll be. But when you don't know how hard they'll be, you have this superpower where you can just like bulldoze your way through them. So I always try, and I'm not perfect at this because I've been through too much now, but like I always try to like keep that mindset of like it's all possible. And then your belief system, I think, allows you to bulldoze your way through things a bit more. So I always try to go back to that because it was the most valuable thing I could have had, which was the naivety that I didn't know how hard things were.
That resonates a lot with me. I'm a big believer that the anxiety about thinking about doing the thing is often more painful and taxing than just doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Well put.
Great, Melissa. Well, where can people find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I love LinkedIn. We didn't touch on that, but I'm a huge believer in the compounding effects of writing on LinkedIn every day. I've seen it over the course of my 8-year career on LinkedIn, and I have a lot of the best things in my career and experiences and opportunities have all come from writing on LinkedIn and the compounding effects of that. And if you feel like it's like a plug for LinkedIn, but if you feel like it's hard to start, just get started and keep doing it every day and you'll see growth. I think that's kind of a mantra for existing and building a career in anything, but I think you can start on LinkedIn. But you can find me there because I write every day.
Amazing. Perfect. Well, Melissa, thank you so much. We survived the empanada miracle and crows trying to eat your lemons. It's a very eventful hour.
It was the empanada was great, by the way. So thank you for that. And I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.